you're starting a dashboard project and you have no idea where to go, this is the best video to start with. We're going to give you tips on how to consider which elements to use, what questions to ask to people, and what things to do to get the best dashboard possible. This is the datadice video series, and let's go. Hello, everybody. Alex, Thomas, and Ricardo. We're back today, and we're talking dashboards. Yes. Alex, how many dashboards have you made in your life?
1 or 2, I would say.
Yesterday, at least 1 or 2. I was thinking about how quite often there's these moments when you're presenting to someone, and dashboard is one of these words that float around and works for many different things. And there are all these, through the years of the 1 and 2 dashboards that you've made, some very good learnings that we could share about how to go through this point. Yes, also Thomas has made some dashboards. And just to get the topic rolling, I think for me, one element that one of the first questions that I ask when they want to make a dashboard, first of all, is like, why? And then, what's the whole point behind the dashboard? No, like this can be something that is going to be on a screen in the lobby of an office showing something, which is a completely different approach. If it's someone going to be doing like an exploratory approach, like they just don't know how the data is and they just want to see how it's structured. And then the other one is the one more maybe operational, that people are going to be actively using filters and seeing what is going, use it to go into detail into what is going. Do you think that there's like these 3 categories that I have in my mind? Is there another one? Is there how would you split it in your head?
Yeah. So I would say I would also say that there are these 3 kinds of categories, and usually you have this kind of overview, right, at the first page or something in the dashboard. And that one, for example, you can also then show on the big screen in the office or wherever in the company, and then you can also open it then on a private computer or browser, whatever, and there you can then also go into details, same dashboard, and so on. So then you have this kind of combination of these 2 dashboards categories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest difference, as you already said, is that dashboard going to be shown somewhere where you cannot interact, cannot click something, cannot change something, like a screen in a hall or in a department's area, or are people actually with their own computer working with that? Because then it should be in 2021 a little bit more interactive, that you can filter, that you can link deeper inside. Years ago we said drill in, drill out. Don't hear that terminology quite often within the last years, but it's still at the end the same thing, that you would like to go deeper inside your data and see more details. And dashboards, reports should, for teams, be created in a way that this is possible. But it's also already quite complex and also detailed. So maybe not the best way to start with that as the first dashboard, but a good vision for the future to go there. Before we start talking about which dashboard or which way of dashboarding we would like to do, we also need to talk about, do we have transform prepare data beforehand, or are we going to one special data source? Because I don't want to talk about databases right now, but just to have that in mind, that's one of the big first steps you should decide. Would I like to connect my reports to multiple data sources? Because then there should be a step before on loading those data sources somewhere, transforming them, make one pretty transformed way of your data, and then analyzing that. Because if you start immediately with your dashboarding system, going to your data sources, at a certain point, there will be a big mess. Maybe not at the very beginning, but there will be a point where too many people are like going to those dashboards, doing changes, and you have no defined KPIs, you have no defined metrics, dimensions, and then that's not working. But today we're talking more about the dashboard itself.
But it's connected, no? I think it's quite relevant, and how you say it, like, it's one of the first questions to ask. It's both like, who's going to be using this dashboard, like who's going to be who's the audience, but also who's going to build it. No, like if there's just one person build it, you have this flexibility of how you're connecting. But if you're thinking, and also maybe in the future, that more people are going to be in play, if you're connecting directly and then building all your combined fields there directly in the visualization tool that you have, it's maybe trickier to keep track of what is happening. And there's also the performance. I know we made this test recently of building, connecting, making a dashboard in two different ways. So we made one dashboard like setting from BigQuery, everything is transformed there, and then just loading like this one data source into Data Studio. And then we made another one just connecting it from multiple parts using Google Sheets mostly. And at least I had never seen it. I mean, of course, I knew it and it made sense in the structure and in reliability in the future. But just on pure performance, it was cool to see that not that large data set was already showing like clear performance. You load it and it was way faster, and the other one way more responsive. And I think that's quite cool to see. Maybe we show a link here.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We can share the result. It was really cool test. We had some customers who had pretty good reports, dashboards already prepared based on Google spreadsheets. That's working super nice with, for example, Data Studio. But there is a point when then also the performance is going down, where everything takes too long, where you can also easily break up your report with changes in spreadsheets, which is also a point. But we also have to say there's a big trade-off. You have to go at the beginning. You said it. Do you have a team or an agency, or do you have one person who's doing that? Because sometimes you can also lose a lot of time and traction with too many structures. So when someone is coming to me and say, hey, Thomas, I do that myself. I don't want to have an agency or someone like helping me. It's just me and the company, and I have 3 data sources. I would say, go to Data Studio, connect to this Data Studio, data sources, do your thing, because the results will be quick. They will be like, he's acting fast, and he can show results quite fast. When he starts on creating GCP project, writing functions to get the data imported with Airflow or whatever, then do transformation, probably quarter years gone, and he can show nothing. So accelerating or giving results quite fast can also be a big advantage. It can be that at a later point, you have to maybe not start from the beginning again, but do a lot of changes to make it a little bit more, to bring a little bit more structure inside. But maybe then that's the deal you have to give. And we saw it in a lot of projects that sometimes too much structure can also be an issue.
Yeah, so let's say maybe we take it as a given, because mostly we know from talking to an organization or talking that who's going to use it. But yeah, it's true. Like, that's the first question. Number one is like, who's going to use it and who's going to build it? From there, like, what type of what concept are you aiming for? Something exploratory, something that? What do you think comes next, Alex?
Yeah, so especially also in terms of audience, so how much they already spend time in Data Studio dashboards and so on, right? In terms of, for example, when you're talking about cross-filtering and so on, or especially filtering and also showing our approach at least, or their approach then in terms of navigation and so on, so that they are that they can handle the dashboard and so on, which is also quite
which is quite connected to the audience in general. So if you have a company where the people or the employees who are using those dashboards are not super analytical, data driven, and whatever, at least at the beginning, we can say, then maybe the most explorative and interactive dashboards, it's not the first thing you aim for, because you would like to rather keep it easy for them, because this whole analytical world of like being interactive and drilling inside will completely blow their mind. So this is also what we learned from some customers, that sometimes building the dashboards in an easier way, with not so many like friction and things you can do, is sometimes better than to have like a super modern interactive dashboard. Then you have some startups where like everyone in the company, when it's a tech startup, is data driven. It's a complete different story, because they know like immediately when they access this dashboard what to do like natively, and then you can do it completely different.
Yeah, it's like the experience with the tools itself, like being the concrete tool or a dashboard or visualization tool, and then there's the experience with the like data analysis.
Exactly.
And that's both is part of knowing your audience. I think then if you're then building a dashboard or you're part of a team who's helping this setup, my next step would be to check for templates. Like, don't go reinvent the wheel, like see what is out there. I think there's so many people participating in visualization communities depending on the specific tool that you're doing. For example, datadice has a lot of good recommendations there. You can check for the templates, and yes, you're not going to use it, but at least to have the conversation started, have some inspiration of how it's structured, how many elements there. And then this is connected to, talking to the stakeholders or the people who are going to be using this dashboard. What is it that they want to see there? No? And then is the next question. It seems super basic, but having a table where you can see, these are the dimensions and metrics that I'm going to have. This is the definition that I have. This is the formula for how they're being calculated. This is the source. Just having this at the beginning saves so much headache, because then like most people take as a given, like you sit 4 people together and it's our constant topic. Now that you say revenue, and I was like, yeah, sure, revenue should be there. And if you just stop at this point, you start building it. And then when you go into data studio, you're like, oh yeah, true. What did I mean with revenue? You know, like where am I gonna take it from? Like, is it including return? Like, it's all these elements. Like, and then from the beginning, being very specific about that stuff. We've been doing it in the mid recent past, like having this very structured approach, and it has saved so much hassle in the future that I would strongly recommend to from the beginning in any type of project. With the one exception of like exploratory dashboard. If you're good, if the dashboard is for you and you're building something, don't even think about colors and stuff. Just connect it to Data Studio, throw the stuff there and check it. If it's a one-time analysis, that's it. Have your own template that you reuse if you're going to show it for somebody. But there's this element of spending too much time making something look way too good.
Yeah. When we talk about this starting point of having the table with dimensions, metrics, formulas, and so on. So you will not get this from the stakeholder. So you need to work on that. You can only ask questions to the stakeholder, like to the people who are using the dashboard at the end. Mm-hmm. And a very good example was the revenue, for example. They will probably tell you, hey, I would like to see the revenue, but it's your job at the end, job of the agency, job of the data team inside the company, to ask, hey, based on our experience, there are 20 versions of the revenue. So you need to tell me very explicitly, what is revenue? What is that KPI for you? What does it mean? What are you expecting? And then maybe write a description which explains the formula and telling, hey, this is excluded, this is included. Yeah. Put the formula also inside later when you have the data sources. But this document with at least those 3 columns need to be there. KPI name, description, formula. If this is not there, you will it will be a tough job after some weeks or month. Second thing you said is when you start on talking to stakeholders who would like to have the dashboard, for me there are 2 things I usually ask. One thing is, can you tell me in your daily business questions you have where this dashboard can help you doing your job? This is super easy at the end. Don't ask them what kind of analysis would you like to see. Ask them, what kind of questions do you have in your daily life while working where this dashboard can help you? Because everything else can be too complex sometimes. Second thing, after we listed all the business questions and all the stuff they have, is if you now have a white paper and I give you the pen and the pen could create the dashboard, draw me super easy how your the dashboard of your dreams could look like. It doesn't matter if you build it at the end like that, or if you optimize something together with the stakeholder, but I would like to have the vision of the one who's using that, how he's going to imagine what he's using later. Normally there are some optimizations on that. Sometimes maybe you completely do it in a different way because there's a special reason for that. But those are the two questions which are the most interesting ones for me when I start with a customer in the project.
Yeah, the business questions is a good one because I think given the freedom, if someone has been, in the recent past used to receiving a PDF report or using some Excel export, a CSV, whatever, if you just ask them like, what would you like to see there? They're like, yeah, everything.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to have like this table with everything there. And just like, then it's also part of like what becomes the unexpected part of a job of a data analyst or someone is like this, like, yes, clarifying the table, like that's super important. Most people thought like, yeah, data is just going to come to me. But no, you need to ask these questions. It's part of the job description, but also being clear of what are the limits. No, like, yes, it's possible. Yes, I can do it. It will probably take no time, but I don't think it's what you want. No, and finding a way that is helpful and friendly to say it, and you don't turn out looking like you're lazy or you're just mean, is where the experience comes from. And being prepared and having known where to ask.
And so especially this, so yeah, sometimes we have Google Sheet, for example, then the customers say, okay, we want to have this table also in Data Studio, which we also sometimes do because it makes sense. For example, if you have your product catalog or something, just to see the whole product catalog in Data Studio makes sense. But then we usually also say, okay, but maybe we should also do already some kind of analyze stuff in terms of adding some scorecards to get a first overview about it and so on. And sometimes they say, yeah, we don't need it or whatever. But sometimes they say, okay, we can try it. And then we try it. And then they see, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Because we already see, for example, if you have a product catalog and then you see how many products are for which gender or for have categories and so on, that you see already have an overview of your products, which makes total sense.
Yeah. When you talk about this communication with the stakeholders, it's also very important. This is not a one-time question where you get this ultimate answer. It's the beginning of a conversation with the one you create a dashboard. It's the first thing you get from them, and you also realize how good they are with data at the end, right? How quick are they grasping what you would like to have from them? How much detail do they have in their answer? It gives you so many information about how the customer is thinking or how the stakeholder is thinking, that it's definitely worth asking. And if you have the answers for that, like the business questions, then you have to redefine that. You have to ask then very specific question to know what you need to build. And what you said, Alex, with the dashboards, I mean, I would not say the more analytical they are, the more complex the dashboards need to be. We had one customer recently, a very analytical company, who said, hey, I would like to have the dashboards way more easy. I would like to have less friction, less data on them to really focus on something. You think, okay, it's a very analytical company. You think you need to give them insights, data, more. And then they look at the dashboard or on one single report page, and they got flooded by information and cannot concentrate, cannot focus on something. So let's say you have a certain field, certain department, what you would like to analyze, then try to give them 4 to 6 scorecards with a certain number on it and maybe an indicator of green, yellow, or red. You can define with your customer. And when this is going yellow or red, then you make a link right next to that scorecard going into the detailed version of that report. And that helps massively because you can focus on something in your daily business. And if you get the answer, I would like to have everything, that's normally fear because they think, okay, I could miss something and I would like to have everything. I would like to download it, that I have the power on like loading that in my Excel file. And your job is to take away that fear, to say, hey, you can still get everything, but you can get it in a better way, which is less time consumption for you And that's the goal of creating a dashboard.
Some topics, just to catching up some notes that I made. First of all, we talked about templates and inspiration. I think a very good one, some short promotion. We send this newsletter every Friday. Alex will talk about it later. That we include, visualizations of so best practices. And I think that is, at least for me, it's been super helpful to receive the newsletter that we ourselves make, because it keeps me fresh and gives me some ideas. So yeah, that's cool. This is a good way to check this and maybe a new approach to do it. And another note that I wrote is like this table of KPI definitions that we're talking about actually has another secret purpose, which is if you're going to present a dashboard to like high level stakeholders, you want to make it like sure that everything is on point and that it looks that you know, that show that you know what you're presenting. And a very good way to have this is have a glossary. And if you make this table, then you already did the glossary. And then when they ask you about the definitions, they're like, yeah, it's in the glossary, which you provided me the information for, and it's here. And that's like double ways saving also in the future, and that's quite good. And to go in point in that, and something that I often a struggle for me to explain when I'm talking to people who actually know are in this area, is like, why this all this part of like, however you want to call it, visualization, dashboard, BI, whatever, why is it different in the iteration cycles as in everything? No? Like if someone who's used with software development, if someone who's used in design, they come with a very specific idea of iterations and how they work. When you're talking about data, you don't have the luxury of being like, it's a bit of a mix, but we can do it. No, like if you present something and the data is wrong, it's a massive loss of trust. And then going again, be like, no, it's the last time the numbers were not good, not good. Yeah. You need to balance like that it already from the first iterations that are going, it already needs to look good. And the main point, like the data already from the start needs to be like on point. It's just about tweaking and adjusting points. No, so having these tools at your disposal of clarifying, yes, for the audience, then the business questions that they want to have, then having a clear table of what is going. On top, maybe having for larger clients, yes, we have like design guidelines. No, that is what the principles are going to be followed to this. So then when the iterations are going, when you're showing what is the first draft based on this paper thing, it's already something about, okay, let's talk about the tweakings about how it is going to be used, how are the functionalities, and that saves an insane amount of time and hassle for everything.
Which is also a very good reason for not working, for example, in Data Studio with preparing all the data. Because if they would like to change something, then it's a big shift you have to do in comparison to having all the transformed data somewhere in the database, and they say, yeah, but I would like to have that a little bit different, or here another KPI, or here we change a little bit the format. Then it's just like visualizing the data, which is quite quick at the end. Sure. One additional information about wrong data. Of course, it's never easy to have the right data from the beginning, because either as a data team or as a agency, you don't know enough about certain things from the customers. So when you say, okay, I show a revenue, you can have the best formula and description from the beginning, but maybe there are some special things the customer is doing you don't know about, or like your own team is doing you don't know about, because you're not inside the marketing team or not inside the sales team and don't know about those specific options. These need to be clarified, not from the beginning, because you don't know that, you have no numbers, you have nothing to show. That's then part of the first, second, third iteration. Important is, in terms of trust, what you said, you need to explain from the beginning where the difference is. So if you say, okay, no idea why the data is not correct, that's not a good start. But if you say, hey, yes, this is exactly like on point, the revenue, how we defined it. But if it's like a difference to what you have at the moment in your analysis in Excel and so on, let's take 1-2 hours sitting together, look inside your definition, look inside how you calculating the stuff, and then we will find probably also the reason why we have a difference of our results here.
Is the accounting element of this, no? Like you go through it and it's like this mix of like design, software development, and accounting that you need to go. And maybe in the end, it's like, you didn't consider discounts, no, or in
For
this
example.
calculation of revenue, and then it's something that you discover through this. But
You
were
also
saying-
you always have to keep in mind that you look to this data on a complete different level than the stakeholder. For the stakeholder, it's like, yeah, I have revenue here because this tool shows me that I have revenue and this is my result. For you, you have way more background information as a data analyst. You say, okay, there are time dimensions. There's a return, which is basically discounting my revenue, which came into my warehouse today. So the revenue will be discounted today. But for a data analyst, maybe the revenue will be discounted the day the order was. Maybe the return was coming in later, but it's discounting the revenue at the time when the order was coming in, not at the time where the return was coming in. And this is one of the very,
It's the
very
accounting part,
broad
yeah.
examples
Yeah.
where differences in results can happen. They are explainable,
Yeah.
but you need to explain them.
Yeah. What are the questions that you receive or you make for people when you're making dashboards?
Due to the just made 1 or 2 dashboard. No, I think we mentioned the most important stuff.
Yeah. I have one more, but I want
Okay,
to see if you
okay,
can.
okay.
No?
Want to see if you're prepared.
No, I just thought about it. One is, and it's very important also to clarify from the beginning, connected to cost and the design of the dashboard, is how fresh they want the data.
Ooh,
No?
good point.
So periodicity, like, do you want it? Yeah, of course, like the common, like, yeah,
Real time.
the freshest that you can get. Like, yeah, well, that's costs more, different to set it up. Like, maybe you don't need it if you're gonna see your year-on-year performance, whatever. So this is a good question to ask, and I would do it actually right from the KPI definition part. Maybe not and the first round of clarifying everything depends of how sophisticated the people that you're talking to is. Sophisticated data part, and because this plays a big role, no, on the design of it.
Generally, I would say you should set up the whole transformation dashboarding thing that you can change your basically update frequency, as I would say it.
Yeah, true.
So what you cannot do is like switching from where daily or hourly import to real time. That's not possible because that would change the whole thing you set up from the beginning. So this is the only question you have to clarify, I would say, to say, hey, would you like to have real-time information because you are a taxi company and you would like to see in real time where your drivers are? Then maybe hourly update is not what you want. For e-commerce, if they say I would like to have real-time information, the first question I would ask is that really necessary?
Real time?
So explain me why it's important for you to have a real-time update rather than 10-minute update. Because even with batch information, we said it in another video, but we have clients where we do a batch update every minute, for example. That's not real-time, right? That's very close to real-time, but it's not real-time. And it's still batch processing and not real-time processing. Because for real-time, you load data and on the fly transform that and put them to the database. For batch performing, you load the data and then you do something with that in a certain frequency. And it's completely different. This is also why there is this a term called ETL and ELT, where a lot of people are at the moment like talking about, is it ETL? Is it ELT? It's both. It really depends on what you're doing. Yeah, are you extracting data, transforming them on the fly and loading them somewhere, or you're extracting data, loading them to a database and transforming them afterwards, like as a batch information. And this is what need to be decided. Most importantly, when a database is involved, like BigQuery or any other database, when you go directly to with Data Studio, for example, to data sources, I think you can change it to 1 minute at the moment, right? Because Data Studio can do 1 minute updates. Yeah. The question is, due to the fact that with every 1 minute update, you cannot cache information, then it's even slower. This you should keep in mind, but otherwise you're quite flexible with that.
Yes.
Something else?
I think that's it.
Let's wrap it up, maybe.
If someone would like to...
No, this is not what I mean with wrapping up. Make a quick summary.
So in quick summary, I made quite a few notes. So main point is have clear questions that you ask at the beginning to the people. Like, okay, what are going to be the business questions that you're going to be solved by this? through that connect to seeing like the audience that you have, both for the dashboard and for so who's going to be using it, who's going to build it, and the type of dashboard that's going to be exploratory, for analysis, for display, whatever. Then you start building your table with the KPIs. So what's the definition, formula, data sources of this? That's on the data side. And then you start thinking about how it's going to look. You can check for templates. You can check our newsletter for some topics. You can build a design guidelines document there where you're specifying which colors you're going to use. And then you go, and that's where you draw in a paper, like what's the wireframing of it, how it's going to look, which are the boxes that is going to be a structure. And from that, your first version of your first iteration is going to be like so much better than the beginning. The questions are going to be much more precise about clarifying something, clarifying the look, rearranging some elements that are already there. And you can, instead of having an endless cycle of iterations, you can do it in 2 or 3.
Yeah. One additional comment on that, there is one of the more recent tools, I would say, for data transformation is Dataform, which is now live in GCP. We will also make some video about that within the next weeks. We don't know when, because we started working with Dataform a little bit more in the past, but we would like to get a little bit more information before we do that video. But this helps you massively if you do your transformation inside the database on documenting everything and building that structure. And there we will have a little bit more insights in the future.
So to know when this video is coming and be updated and to get all this inspiration on best practices and everything, what could I do, Alex?
So you could check also our other YouTube videos. In the first YouTube videos we did, Data Warehousing 101. We also already talked about some parts we also mentioned today. But for sure today it was a little bit more in detail and more in terms of organizing all that stuff and starting with a dashboard. Yes, so check out the other YouTube videos. And then, like always, we have our Medium blog post, also a lot of Data Studio things, more in detail and so on, how you can build cool dashboards out of it. We have still LinkedIn with also Tech Insights and our newsletter every Friday to get, as Ricardo said, some inspirations.
If you're still here and still watching, then A, you are pretty new to that channel, or B, you really enjoy basically Alex's ending performance. We should make some Easter eggs inside at the end.
Yeah. Or you're my mom. Hi. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining, Alex, Thomas, and you watching, and have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.